Resurrection, Supah Ritz, Volume 2, The End of the Phoenix Years. I had long harbored a fantasy about how I'd leave Phoenix Pictures. Finally fed up with one too many tedious, frustrating, demeaning staff meetings, I'd strip naked in the middle of the second-floor conference room, give the whole staff the double bird, and scream, "Fuck you!" as I fled the room, slamming the door behind me. Somehow, in this fantasy, I am also covered entirely in red paint, and my hair is dyed a chartreuse green. I want to burn it down. I want to burn it all down. I want to leave in a way that destroys any possibility that I will ever return to the tedium of an office job and the soul-crushing politics of Hollywood careerism. Sadly, that's not how it ended. One of the reasons I felt like I was in such a weak bargaining position with Medavoy was that I had always kind of sucked at bringing in material. And bringing in material in the 90s was the name of the game. Hollywood legend Jeffrey Katzenberg, the ultimate golden retriever, made his whole career on his ability to nose out scripts and secure them for Paramount and later Disney. While I was at Phoenix, GQ, I believe, did a whole profile on successful development executives like Suzanne Patmore and her crew, and how they tracked material relentlessly with their friends and colleagues over lunches and drinks, 24/7. I was not like this. Also, I did not have friends like this. So when it came to tracking material, trading information with other development executives, I never really had anything to trade. I never knew which agents were going out with what scripts. I barely knew any agents to get them to send me material anyway. The agents I did know well did not go out with a lot of spec screenplays, and I was too full of myself to get to know the younger agents with material to hawk. What's more, as the internet began to play a more pivotal role in the way scripts were tracked, information was no longer traded over the phone, but instead on online tracking boards. I didn't know how these worked, and I was too embarrassed by my own ignorance, caught up in my own issues of status, to try to elbow my way in. What's more, the frenzy of the spec script market in the 90s had given rise to a whole new generation of literary managers, entrepreneurs who mostly skirted the whole mailing room training ground to set up small companies of their own, and it already seemed like they all had relationships with the more junior executives at my company. I was kind of a fool. I found myself asking again why anyone would need me, and I never felt I had a good answer. That didn't put me in a great position to start bargaining with Mike. My irrelevance was largely confirmed when the company pulled the trigger on Jamie Vanderbilt's spec military thriller, Basic, that would eventually be made into a movie directed by John McTiernan, Die Hard. My recollection is that I was not even aware of the script, shot by upstart manager Mikkel Bondesen, and brought into our company by former Medavoy assistant Brad Fisher, until we were already negotiating for its purchase. I was not consulted on its quality or commercial prospects, and I didn't really care. It was just as well. I would have tried to kill it for sure, because the script felt like a convoluted mess to me. And to be fair, who knows if that would have been the right choice. Sure, the film also turned out to be a convoluted mess, at least according to the reviews. I never saw it myself. But I think Phoenix was ultimately paid a generous producing fee by a third-party financier to produce the film. Perhaps it was good for business after all, and I might have stopped that. It also sucks to always be the one in the room telling everyone their material sucks ass. Killing projects is easy. Shitting on everything is easy. It's harder to make a bet and stick with it. Sometimes I felt it was better for everyone if I was just out of the way. But the real reason I wasn't more miffed and hurt was that I had recently been approached by my old boss, Howard Baldwin, about joining his new venture, Crusader Entertainment. I wasn't sure it was a job I wanted. I had, after all, turned down the opportunity to be an executive at the company he ran with his wife, Karen, 5 years before. Things in the interim had not gone well for them. The Pittsburgh Penguins, the NHL franchise that Howard owned, had been forced into bankruptcy. That could not be good. But they had managed to consistently make movies in Hollywood, and one of those movies, Mystery Alaska, had caught the eye of a fellow NHL franchise owner, Philip Anschutz. He wanted to make a play in Hollywood. I didn't know much about Anschutz except he had been on both Mike Medavoy's and Rick Hess's phone sheets over the years as a sizable financial target, a likely film investor they both wanted to get in business with. Not only did Anschutz own the Kings, but he had amassed a multi-billion-dollar fortune founded, at that point, on his family's railroad system and the attendant right-of-ways which he used to build Quest Communications. He was worth $11 billion at the time. That was certainly interesting to me. I did have misgivings about getting back into business with Howard and Karen, though. In my mind, they were still hobbyists, and I had cut my teeth in the rough and tumble world of William Morris and studio financing. I didn't want to go back to work for a mom-and-pop startup. I was also skeptical of their eye for material. After an initial lunch, they had sent me a slate that included Goliath, Die Hard on an Oil Rig, and Howard had pitched me an idea that amounted to Die Hard in a pyramid. Pyramids, for the record, do not have interiors. It's hard to do anything in them. Go figure. I hadn't been crazy about Die Hard in a skyscraper, so both ideas scared me not insubstantially. What's more, Howard insisted Goliath was already greenlit, which I did not believe, and as it still has not gotten made 20 years later, clearly was not accurate. Either he was not being straight with me, or equally scary and equally plausible, he did not really understand the intricacies of the business. So why, you might ask, would you even entertain an offer from people whose taste you did not trust and word you would not take? Well, I wanted the money. At the very least, I wanted the leverage to force Medavoy's hand. If I could get an offer from Howard and Karen, I could possibly use it to solicit a real counteroffer from Phoenix. And if Mike and Phoenix balked, what was the worst that could happen? I would end up with a high-paying job with a well-financed film entity. It didn't seem I could lose. When I did eventually get the official offer from Howard, more than tripling my Phoenix salary and providing some performance-based incentives, I immediately marched into Mike's office to see if he wanted to dance. I didn't give him some ultimatum. Instead, I presented it to him as my mentor. What would you do in this situation? After all, he had at many times along the way been one of my most ardent supporters. And to this day, I harbor a deep filial affection for Mike, and believe he usually had my best interests at heart. I mean, so long as they did not conflict with his own. I have to admit, I was surprised by his agility in this conversation. When I told him I had an offer, he did not miss a beat. He didn't offer to counter my proposal, or to fold and let me go. Instead, he suggested we join forces. I really didn't see that coming. We have this incredible distribution deal, Nick, he said. You bring in Anschutz's money, we can put the movies through my deal, and you can run the whole thing. It really was an intriguing prospect. Mike's deal, a 20-picture put distribution arrangement with Sony, had its flaws, but it was already the last of its kind. It would be a hard arrangement for even Phil Anschutz's money to match. I quickly tried to imagine myself running this entity, and found it an intriguing prospect. The influx of capital would put the company back at the top of the Hollywood food chain. Mike's tastes and connection would inoculate me against the relative inexperience of the Baldwins. My relationship with both Mike and Howard and Phil's money would give me a credible power base to keep my younger colleagues in check. While I couldn't game out the dynamics between Mike and Howard, I could easily see how this might be a great arrangement for me. I told Mike I'd try to make it happen. Knowing what I know now about Hollywood, I don't think anyone in Howard's position would ever join forces with someone like Mike. Howard had a big tranche of cash and an opportunity to build a studio on his own. As much as Hollywood inevitably relies on collaboration, everyone, especially at the top of the executive suite, strives for greater control. No one willingly gives that up without some serious duress. Still, Howard agreed to come in and meet with Mike to hear him out. The biggest challenge for me going into that meeting came down to figuring out how to maintain my neutrality without offending either party. I would, after all, end up working for one of them, and I didn't want either to feel undermined or betrayed. I also did not want either to feel that they owned me. I wanted them to feel that my employment was actively in play. But once I made the initial introductions, it became pretty clear that I was largely superfluous to this meeting. After the most perfunctory niceties, Medavoy, never the most tactical diplomat, asserted that he was happy to meet Howard but did not actually need him to get to Phil. If I want to get to Anschutz, I can get to him myself, he told Howard. Golly, I thought, he's probably right. And why would the multi-billionaire Anschutz choose Howard as his representative in Hollywood when there were so many more successful producers and execs chasing his money? I braced myself for Howard's response, worried he might crack under the indignity of such a belittling opening salvo. But it turned out this was not Howard's first rodeo. He had been buying and selling NHL teams for the past 20 years. He'd dealt with his fair share of tough customers. I'm sure you can get to Phil on your own, he said. But when you do, you're just going to find yourself back in this room with me. So why don't we just get down to it? Well played, I thought. Well played. Mike pitched Howard his idea for marrying Phil's money with the Phoenix distribution deal, but he had already poisoned the well. The pitch was wasted on Howard, and Mike could see it too. He didn't give it his all. I'm not sure Howard, or anyone in his position, would have seen the wisdom in the arrangement anyway. Everyone assumes they can make a better deal. It was hard to realize back then that the landscape for overalls had already radically shifted. While Howard would ultimately make an overall with Paramount, it paled in comparison with what Mike had at Sony. Still, Howard told Mike that he would discuss the idea of a partnership with Philip Anschutz, but we could all tell it was going nowhere. I walked Howard and Karen to the elevator. Howard was not pleased, but he didn't blame me. Jesus, Nick, he said. Let's get you out of here. You need a fucking shower after walking into this place. And he climbed into the elevator and was gone. Mike never made a financial play to keep me at Phoenix. Over the next couple days, Howard and I traded more deal terms and then came to an arrangement. I signed a contract and told Mike and my colleagues I was leaving. I didn't feel anyone was particularly sad to see me go. In retrospect, I probably should have painted myself red and left in a screeching nihilistic rage. People might have missed that. I wish I could say I was excited about the adventure ahead, but I really was not. It felt great to have a real salary and access to endless capital. It felt great to finally leave Phoenix on my own terms. It felt great to be wanted. It felt great to be recognized for the work I'd already done. The Baldwins really felt that I'd contributed to their company when I was just a lowly receptionist. It felt great to be able to brag to my friends that I'd gotten a fat raise, but it also felt a little like I was going backwards instead of on to something great. Also, I had seen how difficult it was to succeed in the business. I had seen rich guys come and go from my perch at William Morris, watching them get fleeced by the agents they thought were their friends. Even a seasoned vet like Mike was struggling to make it work. It seemed unlikely that a neophyte like Howard, despite his folksy bonhomie, was going to somehow fare better. I doubted it. But I also doubted the future of Phoenix. I didn't think the sixth day would save the company, and I did not believe that it would continue to operate as a standalone financier. I wasn't interested in being a part of whatever company was to come, struggling with true financiers and producers for influence and control. I didn't think I'd be very good at it either. At least with Anschutz, I'd be working with someone with true greenlight capacity. I'd be able to make some movies and make some decent money while I tried to figure out what might come next. Urban Legend's Final Cut opened the weekend I left Phoenix. It was #1 at the box office, which felt great. Who doesn't want to be responsible for a #1 film? But it also debuted in a very weak frame, and the receipts would not be enough to fill Phoenix's coffers. It had done well enough to give me an ego boost, but not so well I'd felt I'd made the wrong choice. But then Saturday night found me at a party with a bunch of old boarding school friends. One of them had gone to Princeton with Philip Anschutz's daughter, Libby. "Nice girl," he said. "It's just a little weird, the whole Christian thing. You're not freaked out by that?" "The whole Christian thing," I said. "What?" "Yeah, Anschutz is a major Christian. You didn't know that?" I'm sure my face betrayed my horror, as I realized, like so many realizations that have come to me in my life, way too late in the game, that I had just signed a contract with an evangelical Christian film company. Oh boy, I had no idea what was in store.